Don't fire him. He saved your company. The words were not loud. They did not echo through the towering glass atrium of Whitmore Tower like a shout. Yet somehow they cut through the morning noise more sharply than the chime of elevators, the tapping of expensive shoes on polished marble, or the constant murmur of executives rushing toward another busy workday. For a moment, everything seemed to slow. Nathan Whitmore stood near the center of the lobby, 6 feet 2 inches tall, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people earned in a month. As the billionaire founder of Whitmore Technologies, he was a man whose decisions moved markets and changed lives. This morning, however, his attention was fixed on a cardboard box sitting in the trembling hands of Walter Jenkins. Walter was 72 years old. His gray maintenance uniform looked freshly pressed despite its age. A ring of worn keys hung from his belt. For nearly 3 decades, he had arrived before sunrise, cleaned hallways, fixed leaking pipes, replaced burned-out lights, and quietly greeted thousands of employees who barely knew his name. Today, he was leaving. Security stood nearby. Employees watched from a distance. Some pretended not to stare. Others openly whispered. The accusation had spread through the building before breakfast. Sensitive company files had disappeared, and evidence supposedly pointed to Walter. Nathan had reviewed the report himself. The conclusion appeared simple. Walter Jenkins was being terminated immediately. Walter swallowed hard and adjusted his grip on the box containing family photos, a coffee mug, and a few old tools. His eyes remained lowered. He looked more disappointed than angry, more hurt than defeated. Nathan's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry it came to this," he said. Walter nodded once. "I understand, sir." Then the small voice came again. "He didn't do it." Heads turned. Near the edge of the crowd stood a little girl with dark braided hair and warm brown eyes. She couldn't have been older than 9. Her backpack hung from one shoulder. Her sneakers were slightly worn. A cafeteria employee standing nearby suddenly looked alarmed. "Amara," she whispered. "Come back here." But Amara Brooks didn't move. She stared directly at Nathan Whitmore. The billionaire frowned. "What did you say?" Amara swallowed, her hands tightening around the strap of her backpack. For a second, she looked nervous. Then something stronger settled into her expression. "I said he didn't do it." A ripple of murmurs moved through the lobby. Nathan glanced toward Walter, then back toward the girl. "And how would you know that?" he asked. Amara hesitated. The giant windows behind her filled the room with bright morning sunlight. Dust floated through the beams like tiny stars. Somewhere above them, an elevator bell chimed softly. "Because I saw something," she said. Diane Mercer stepped forward immediately. As Whitmore Technologies' chief financial officer, she carried herself with effortless confidence. Her tailored navy suit looked perfect. Her smile looked perfect too, maybe a little too perfect. "Nathan," she said gently, "she's a child. This isn't the place." Several executives nodded in agreement. The tension eased slightly. Adults preferred simple explanations. Nathan almost agreed. Almost. Yet something about the girl's face stopped him. She wasn't seeking attention. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She looked frightened. But she also looked absolutely certain. Walter finally raised his eyes. For the first time all morning, a flicker of surprise crossed his face. "Amara," he said softly. "It's okay." The girl shook her head. "No, Mr. Walter. It's not okay." The lobby fell quiet again. Even the security guard seemed unsure what to do. Nathan studied her carefully. In boardrooms, he had learned to read people. Investors, competitors, politicians. He could usually detect uncertainty in seconds. Yet the conviction in Amara's voice felt impossible to ignore. "What exactly did you see?" Nathan asked. Before she could answer, her mother hurried forward from the cafeteria entrance. "Sir, I'm sorry," she said. "She doesn't mean any trouble." Amara looked up at her mother, then back at Nathan. "I don't want trouble," she said. "I just don't want you to make a mistake." The words landed harder than anyone expected. A mistake. Nathan. Whitmore rarely heard that word directed toward him. Around the lobby, employees exchanged nervous glances. Diane's smile faded for the briefest moment before returning. Walter stood frozen beside his box. The sunlight shifted across the marble floor. Somewhere outside, a siren passed in the distance. Nathan slowly looked from the old janitor to the little girl. For reasons he couldn't explain, the certainty he had felt only minutes earlier began to crack. Then Amara reached into her backpack and wrapped her fingers around something hidden inside. Her eyes never left Nathan's face. And for the first time that morning, the billionaire found himself wondering whether the truth had been standing in front of him all along. The object remained hidden inside Amara's backpack as dozens of eyes stayed fixed on her. Nathan Whitmore folded his arms and waited. The giant lobby no longer felt like the entrance to a billion-dollar company. It felt like a courtroom suspended in time. Diane Mercer recovered first. A soft laugh escaped her lips as she glanced around the crowd. "This has gone far enough," she said. "A child says she saw something. That does not change the facts." Several executives nodded immediately. The certainty of an official report was easier to trust than the words of a fourth grader. Nathan looked toward the security director, standing nearby. "The investigation was completed this morning?" "Yes, sir," the man answered. "The findings were reviewed twice." Diane offered a sympathetic smile toward Amara. "Sweetheart, sometimes adults have information that children do not understand." Amara lowered her eyes for a moment. Nathan expected her confidence to disappear. Instead, she tightened her grip on her backpack and looked directly at Diane. "Then why are you nervous?" The question landed like a pebble dropped into still water. Tiny ripples spread through the crowd. Diane blinked. Only once. But Nathan noticed it. He noticed everything. It was one of the habits that had helped him build his company from a two-person startup into a technology empire. Diane's smile returned quickly. "I am not nervous." "You keep looking at the elevator," Amara replied quietly. Several heads turned toward the bank of elevators at the far end of the lobby. Diane's expression remained calm, but the atmosphere shifted. Walter Jenkins stood motionless beside his box. The old janitor seemed almost afraid to breathe. Nathan glanced toward him. "Did you tell her anything about this situation?" Walter shook his head immediately. "No, sir. I would never involve her." Nathan believed him. The answer came too quickly, too honestly. Amara's mother stepped closer and placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Amara, maybe we should go." "Mom, please." Her voice was respectful but firm. Mr. Walter helped everybody in this building. Nobody helped him. The words created another uncomfortable silence. Employees exchanged glances. Walter was the man who fixed broken chairs, carried supplies during snowstorms, and stayed late whenever a problem appeared. Most people knew that. Few had ever said it aloud. Nathan slowly exhaled. "You said you saw something." Amara nodded. "Yes, sir. When? Last Thursday night." Diane immediately stepped forward. "Nathan, this is ridiculous." He raised a hand. The gesture was small, but it stopped her instantly. "Let her speak." The little girl swallowed. The sunlight that had filled the lobby earlier now stretched across the floor in long golden bands. Outside the glass walls, traffic moved through downtown Chicago. Inside, nobody seemed to move at all. "Mom had the late shift in the cafeteria," Amara explained. "I stayed after school because she could not pick me up until evening." Nathan listened carefully. "And I was doing homework near the service hallway." Diane crossed her arms. "Nathan, children imagine things all the time." Amara looked at her. "I do not." The confidence in her voice surprised everyone. Even Nathan felt a slight tug of curiosity. "What happened in the hallway?" he asked. Amara hesitated. Not because she was uncertain, because she was remembering. "I saw somebody come out of the records office." The crowd stirred immediately. That office had become the center of the entire investigation. "Who?" Nathan asked. Before Amara could answer, a loud ding echoed through the lobby. One of the elevators opened. Every head turned. A group of employees stepped out, unaware that the entire building seemed frozen around them. The interruption broke the tension for only a second. Then all attention returned to the little girl. Diane's jaw tightened. Nathan saw it again. Just a fraction. Just enough. "Who did you see?" he repeated. Amara slowly reached into her backpack. Walter's eyes widened. Her mother looked worried. Diane looked alarmed. Nathan noticed that too. The little girl pulled out a small object and held it carefully in both hands. It was not a toy. It was not a notebook. It was a worn silver keychain with a tiny attached camera no bigger than a matchbox. Walter stared at it in disbelief. "Mr. Walter fixed it for me months ago," Amara said softly. "And I think it recorded something nobody was supposed to see." Across the lobby, for the first time that morning, Nathan Whitmore saw genuine fear flash across Diane Mercer's face before she could hide it. The silver keychain seemed impossibly small in Amara's hands, yet every person in the lobby stared at it, as if it carried the weight of the entire company. Nathan Whitmore stepped forward and carefully took the device. The polished metal reflected the afternoon sunlight streaming through the glass walls. Walter Jenkins looked stunned. "I remember that camera," he said quietly. "It stopped working months ago." Amara nodded. "That is what we thought." Nathan turned the tiny device over in his hand. "You are telling me this recorded something?" Amara nodded again. "I forgot it was clipped to my backpack." Diane Mercer let out a short laugh that sounded forced. "Nathan, this is becoming absurd. A broken toy camera is not evidence." Nathan did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the head of information technology who had quietly joined the crowd. "Can we access whatever is stored on this?" The man adjusted his glasses. "If there is data on it, yes, sir." A strange silence followed. Diane crossed her arms and stared toward the windows. Nathan noticed she was no longer smiling. The technology manager carefully connected the tiny camera to a company laptop brought down from an executive office. Employees edged closer. Security guards remained still. Even the reception desk had gone silent. The screen flickered. For a moment, nothing appeared. Then a grainy video began to play. The footage shook slightly as if recorded while moving. Nathan immediately recognized the service corridor near the records department. The timestamp displayed Thursday night at 9:42 p.m. Amara's eyes widened. "That was when I was finishing my math homework." The camera showed portions of the hallway, cleaning carts, and maintenance closets. Then the image shifted. A figure appeared near the records office door. Several employees leaned forward. Nathan narrowed his eyes. The quality was poor, but the person entering the corridor was clearly not Walter Jenkins. Murmurs spread across the lobby. Walter stared at the screen without blinking. The video continued. The individual used an access card and disappeared inside the records office. The timestamp advanced. 3 minutes passed. Then the person emerged carrying a slim document case. The camera angle briefly caught the figure turning toward the hallway lights. Not enough to reveal a face, but enough to reveal something else. A bright silver bracelet reflected the overhead lighting. Diane suddenly spoke. "That could be anyone." Her voice arrived too quickly, too sharply. Nathan glanced toward her. The room felt colder than before. The technology manager paused the footage and zoomed in. The image became blurry, but the bracelet remained visible. A decorative chain with a distinctive diamond-shaped charm. Several employees exchanged looks. One woman from accounting slowly lowered her coffee cup. Nathan noticed her expression. "What is it?" he asked. The woman hesitated. "I have seen that bracelet before." Nobody spoke. "Where?" Nathan asked. The woman swallowed. Her eyes drifted toward Diane. The silence that followed felt endless. Diane's face remained composed, but a faint tension appeared around her eyes. "Lots of people wear bracelets," she said. Nathan turned back toward the screen. The footage resumed. The person disappeared from view. Then another figure entered the corridor several minutes later. Walter Jenkins. The old janitor walked slowly past the records office carrying a toolbox. He stopped. He appeared to notice the office door slightly open. The video showed him looking inside. Then he stepped into the room. More murmurs spread through the crowd. "That is the part they used against him," someone whispered. The recording continued. Less than a minute later, Walter emerged again. He was not carrying any files. He simply closed the door and continued down the hallway with his toolbox. The video ended. Nobody moved. Nathan stared at the frozen image on the screen. The official report claimed Walter had entered the office and stolen confidential records. Yet the footage showed someone else entering first. Someone carrying documents out before Walter ever appeared. Walter slowly lowered his head. Not in shame this time. In relief. Years of loyalty seemed to rest in that single breath. Amara looked up at Nathan. "I told you he did not do it." Nathan did not answer right away. His attention remained fixed on Diane Mercer. For the first time since the confrontation began, he was no longer questioning whether Walter was innocent. He was beginning to question something far more dangerous. Who had wanted Walter blamed in the first place? The lobby remained silent long after the video stopped. The frozen image on the laptop screen seemed to hold everyone in place. Nathan Whitmore slowly lifted his eyes from the footage and looked directly at Diane Mercer. Neither of them spoke at first. The tension was subtle, almost invisible, but every employee in the room could feel it. Diane straightened her posture and folded her hands calmly in front of her. "The recording proves nothing," she said at last. "It shows an unidentified person walking through a hallway." Nathan did not look away. "It proves Walter was not the first person inside that office." Diane gave a small shrug. "Then perhaps there were multiple people involved." A murmur spread through the crowd. Walter Jenkins lowered his cardboard box onto the marble floor. For the first time all day, he seemed less concerned about losing his job than about understanding what had happened. Amara stood quietly beside her mother, watching every expression in the room. Nathan turned toward the technology manager, who reviewed the security findings. "The report was compiled through the Executive Compliance Office, sir." Nathan's eyes shifted back to Diane. The compliance office ultimately reported to her department. Diane immediately answered before anyone could ask, and the report was based on the information available at the time. Nathan nodded slowly. "Was this footage available?" Diane hesitated, only for a second, but Nathan noticed. So did Amara. "No," Diane replied. "Nobody knew that camera existed." Amara looked up. "Mr. Walter did." Several employees glanced toward the old janitor. Walter appeared surprised. "I fixed it for her because she wanted to record her science project." A few people smiled despite the tension. Nathan continued studying Diane. Years of negotiations had taught him something important. People often revealed themselves not through answers, but through the speed of their answers. Diane had always been composed. Today, she seemed unusually eager. "You said the report contained all available evidence," Nathan said. "Yes." "Then why was the investigation completed in less than 12 hours? Diane blinked. The question caught her off guard. Because the evidence was straightforward. Or because someone wanted it finished quickly. The lobby became even quieter. Outside the glass walls, clouds drifted across the Chicago skyline. Sunlight faded behind them, leaving softer shadows across the marble floor. Diane's expression hardened slightly. "Nathan, are you accusing me of something?" "I am asking questions." "Based on the claims of a child?" Nathan looked toward Amara. The little girl immediately lowered her eyes, suddenly aware that dozens of adults were discussing her. Then she remembered Walter standing alone with his box and lifted her chin again. "I am not making claims," she said softly. "I am telling the truth." The words hung in the air. Walter closed his eyes briefly. Grace Holloway, Nathan's longtime executive assistant, stepped forward from the edge of the crowd. She rarely interrupted executive discussions. That fact alone made everyone pay attention. "There is something else," she said. Nathan turned toward her. "Go ahead." Grace hesitated. "Last Thursday evening, I stayed late preparing board documents." Diane's attention snapped toward her. Grace continued. "Around 9:30, I remember seeing Walter in the West Maintenance Wing replacing ceiling lights." Walter nodded immediately. "That is correct." Grace looked at Nathan. "The records office is on the opposite side of the building." Several employees exchanged glances. The timeline suddenly became much more complicated than the official report suggested. Diane forced a smile. "Memory is not evidence." Grace met her gaze. "Neither is assumption." For the first time, a few people openly nodded in agreement. Nathan could feel the atmosphere changing. Earlier that morning, everyone had accepted Walter's guilt. Now uncertainty had taken its place. And uncertainty was dangerous because it encouraged people to look closer. Amara quietly stepped forward again. "There is something else." Nathan looked down at her. "What is it?" She pointed toward the paused image on the laptop screen. "Can you zoom in again?" The technology manager enlarged the frame, showing the silver bracelet. The image became blurry, but the diamond-shaped charm remained visible. Amara stared at it. Then she looked toward Diane. Her brow furrowed slightly. "I have seen that before." Diane's expression froze. Nathan noticed immediately. "Where?" he asked. Amara thought for a moment. "At the company picnic." The room seemed to stop breathing. Diane laughed softly. Too softly. Too carefully. Many people attended the picnic. Not with that bracelet. Amara's voice was quiet, but certain. Nathan turned back toward the screen. The tiny silver charm reflected the hallway lights. Suddenly, the bracelet no longer looked like a random detail. It looked like a clue. And for the first time since the confrontation began, Diane Mercer seemed unable to find the perfect response. The silence finally broke when Nathan Whitmore closed the laptop himself. The soft click echoed through the lobby like a decision that had not yet been spoken aloud. Nobody returned to work. Nobody reached for a phone. Every employee seemed to understand that something important had shifted. Nathan looked at Walter Jenkins, then at the cardboard box resting beside the old janitor's feet. "You are not leaving this building today," he said. Walter blinked in surprise. A few employees exchanged relieved glances. Nathan was not offering an apology yet. He was offering something almost as important. Time. Diane Mercer immediately stepped forward. "Nathan, we cannot suspend company procedures because of speculation." Nathan turned toward her. "Then we will follow proper procedures." His voice remained calm, starting with a complete review. Diane opened her mouth, then stopped. The confidence she had carried all morning seemed less certain now. Nathan looked toward Grace Holloway. "Clear my afternoon schedule." Grace nodded immediately. "Yes, sir. And arrange access to every security archive connected to the records department." "I will handle it." Nathan then surprised everyone by looking directly at Amara. "Would you show me exactly where you were when you recorded that video?" The little girl looked startled. "Me? Yes." Her mother hesitated. Nathan noticed. "Only if you are comfortable with it." Amara looked up at her mother. After a moment, her mother nodded. "You can show him." A small smile appeared on Amara's face. Not because she enjoyed the attention, because someone was finally listening. 15 minutes later, the lobby began to empty. Employees reluctantly returned to elevators and offices, whispering to one another as they disappeared. Walter remained near the entrance holding his box. He seemed uncertain what to do next. Nathan approached him. "Mr. Jenkins." Walter straightened immediately. "Sir." Nathan glanced at the box. "Put that down for now." The old man's eyes softened. He carefully set it beside a reception desk. For nearly 30 years, he had entered the building through employee entrances before sunrise. Today was the first time the owner of the company had asked him to stay. Together, Nathan, Grace, Walter, Amara, and her mother entered a service elevator. Diane watched from across the lobby. Her expression remained controlled, but her eyes followed them until the doors closed. The elevator descended quietly. The polished executive floors disappeared from view. Soon they reached the lower maintenance levels that few executives ever visited. The atmosphere changed immediately. Bright marble became concrete floors. Decorative lighting became practical fixtures. The faint scent of coffee and expensive cologne gave way to metal, cleaning supplies, and machinery. Nathan looked around. "I have not been down here in years." Walter smiled faintly. "Most executives have not." The elevator opened into a maintenance corridor. Amara stepped forward confidently. "This way." Nathan followed. So did Grace. Walter carried a ring of keys that jingled softly with every step. The hallway stretched ahead beneath rows of fluorescent lights. Their reflections shimmered across the polished floor. Eventually, Amara stopped near a storage room beside the records department. "I was sitting right here." She pointed toward a folding chair tucked beside a vending machine. "Mom was working late upstairs. I was finishing math homework." Nathan looked around carefully. The location provided a clear view of the corridor shown in the video. Grace folded her arms. She could see almost everything from here. Amara nodded. "That is why I noticed someone." Nathan slowly walked toward the records office door. Something about the area bothered him. He could not yet explain why. Then Walter suddenly stopped moving. "That is strange." Everyone turned toward him. Walter pointed toward a section of wall near the ceiling. There used to be a maintenance camera there. Nathan followed his gaze. A mounting bracket remained attached to the wall, but the camera itself was gone. Grace frowned. "When was it removed?" Walter shook his head. "I do not know. Nobody told me." Nathan's expression darkened slightly. Another piece of the puzzle had appeared. Amara stared at the empty bracket. Then she noticed something else. A narrow metal access panel hidden beside a utility closet. "What is that?" she asked. Walter looked surprised. "Just an old maintenance compartment." He walked over and unlocked it. The small door creaked open. Inside sat dusty cables, electrical equipment, and several storage containers. Then Walter froze. Nathan stepped closer. Resting on the top shelf was a black document case, the exact size and shape of the one visible in the video. Nobody spoke. Dust floated through the fluorescent light as Nathan slowly reached toward the case. Whatever was inside had been hidden for a reason, and for the first time since the investigation began, he felt certain they were standing only inches away from the truth. For several long seconds, nobody moved. The black document case sat on the dusty shelf as if it had been waiting for someone to find it. Nathan Whitmore carefully lifted it from the compartment. A thin layer of dust coated the surface, suggesting it had remained hidden there for weeks. Walter Jenkins stared at it in disbelief. "I have never seen that before," he said quietly. Grace Holloway stepped closer. "Can you open it?" Nathan examined the latch. It was not locked. The clicks sounded unusually loud inside the small maintenance room. Everyone leaned forward. Inside were folders, financial statements, printed emails, and several flash drives arranged with surprising care. Nathan removed the first folder. His eyes scanned the pages. Then his expression changed. Grace immediately noticed. "What is it?" Nathan did not answer at first. He turned several pages, then handed the folder to her. Grace read silently. Her eyes widened. "These are employee assistance records." Walter frowned. "The emergency fund?" Grace nodded slowly. Whitmore Technologies maintained a charitable assistance program designed to help employees facing medical hardships, family emergencies, and unexpected financial crises. Nathan had created the program years earlier after one of his first employees struggled to pay for cancer treatment. Hundreds of workers had relied on it over the years. Yet something about the records felt wrong. Nathan picked up another folder. Then another. The numbers did not match. Approval amounts differed from payment amounts. Transactions appeared incomplete. Several signatures looked suspiciously similar despite supposedly belonging to different people. Amara watched quietly as the adults exchanged concerned glances. "What does it mean?" she asked. Nathan lowered the papers. "It means somebody may have been moving money." Walter's face tightened. "From the employee fund?" Nathan nodded. A heavy silence followed. Grace opened one of the flash drives using a maintenance computer located nearby. A spreadsheet appeared on the screen. Rows of transactions stretched across multiple years. Payment requests. Approval codes. Transfers. Dozens of entries. Then Grace noticed a pattern. "Nathan." Her voice dropped. "Look at these authorizations." Nathan stepped beside her. Every questionable transaction carried approval credentials linked to Diane Mercer's department. Not direct signatures. Not obvious evidence. But enough to establish a connection. Walter slowly sat down on an empty storage crate. "That cannot be why." Nathan looked toward him. "Why what?" Walter hesitated. For a moment, he seemed unsure whether to speak. Then he took a slow breath. 3 weeks ago, I found something." Everyone turned toward him. "What kind of something?" Nathan asked. Walter looked down at his weathered hands. "I was repairing a leaking pipe above the executive archive room." His voice remained steady. A folder had fallen behind a cabinet. I picked it up and noticed documents about the Employee Assistance Fund. Grace listened carefully. Walter continued. "Some numbers did not make sense. I thought it was probably a clerical mistake." Nathan felt his stomach tighten. "What did you do?" "I made copies." The room went completely still. Walter looked embarrassed. "I know it was not my place. But people depend on that fund. Some employees have children. Some have sick family members. I thought someone should know if something was wrong." Nathan exchanged a glance with Grace. Suddenly the pieces began fitting together. "Who did you tell?" Walter swallowed. "Nobody." "Nobody." Walter nodded. "I wanted to verify everything first. I kept the copies in my toolbox." Amara's eyes widened. "Your toolbox?" Walter looked at her and slowly nodded. "The same toolbox everyone thought I used to steal documents." Nathan turned away for a moment. The realization hit harder than he expected. Walter had not been stealing records. He had been protecting them. Worse, he had apparently been punished for it. Grace opened another file. Several emails appeared. Most were ordinary. Then one message caught her attention. It referenced concerns about missing assistance funds and requested an internal review. The sender name made her freeze. Walter Jenkins. The message had never been delivered. It sat permanently in the draft folder. Walter looked surprised. "I wrote that." Nathan stared at the screen. "Why was it never sent?" Walter shook his head. "I thought I had sent it." Nobody spoke. The answer was becoming increasingly obvious. Someone had intercepted the complaint before it reached the executive office. Someone who knew exactly how dangerous Walter's discovery could become. Amara looked from face to face. She was only 9 years old, yet even she could feel the direction of the truth. The hidden case. The altered records. The missing camera. The unfinished email. They were no longer separate clues. They were parts of the same story. Nathan slowly closed the folder in his hands. Earlier that morning, he had believed Walter Jenkins was guilty. Now he understood something far worse. The old janitor had not been hiding evidence of a crime. He had been hiding evidence of integrity. And somewhere above them, in the executive floors of Whitmore Tower, someone was beginning to realize that the truth had finally been found. The discovery should have brought relief. Instead, it brought a new kind of tension. The maintenance room suddenly felt smaller, quieter, as if the walls themselves were listening. Nathan Whitmore gathered the folders and flash drives into the black document case and closed it carefully. Nobody questioned the seriousness of what they had found. The evidence was no longer pointing toward Walter Jenkins. It was pointing somewhere else entirely. Grace Holloway checked her phone and frowned. That is strange. Nathan looked at her. What is it? I just received 3 messages from different department managers. She scrolled through the screen. They are asking whether the investigation is over. Walter looked surprised. How would they even know about it? Grace shook her head. That is exactly the problem. Nathan understood immediately. Information was spreading through the company far faster than it should have been. Someone was talking. Someone was watching. Amara sat quietly on a storage crate, swinging her feet slightly above the floor. She was tired, but she remained focused. Something about the situation continued bothering her. Then her mother looked down at her phone and her expression changed. Oh no. Amara immediately looked up. What happened? Her mother hesitated. The cafeteria supervisor just sent a message. Nathan turned toward her. Is there a problem? She looked uncomfortable. Apparently there is a rumor going around that Amara made up the story. The room fell silent. Walter's shoulders dropped. Grace's expression hardened. Nathan slowly exhaled. The response had come faster than expected. Someone had already begun fighting back. Amara lowered her eyes. She did not cry. She did not complain. But Nathan noticed the disappointment on her face. For a child, being called a liar could feel heavier than any accusation. Walter immediately walked over and sat beside her. Do not listen to that. Amara looked up. But people will believe it. Walter smiled gently. Some will. Some will not. The truth takes longer to travel than gossip. But it usually gets there. The old janitor's words lingered in the room. Nathan found himself studying Walter differently now. For years, he had viewed him as part of the background of the company. Reliable. Familiar. Easy to overlook. Yet the man possessed a quiet strength that many executives lacked. Grace's phone vibrated again. Then Nathan's phone buzzed. Then another message arrived. Grace looked concerned. Someone is pushing a narrative. Nathan checked his screen. Several executives were suddenly questioning the credibility of the evidence. Others claimed the maintenance camera footage could have been manipulated. The objections sounded remarkably similar, almost rehearsed. Nathan closed the phone. Interesting. Grace nodded. Very interesting. Amara looked confused. Why? Nathan crouched until he was at eye level with her. Because people only work this hard to discredit something when they are afraid of it. The little girl considered that for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. It made sense. Fear explained many things. The hidden documents. The missing camera. The unfinished email. And now the rumors. Walter suddenly remembered something. His eyes widened slightly. My toolbox. Nathan looked at him. What about it? The copies I made. Nathan straightened. You said you kept them there. Walter nodded. I checked after the investigation started. They were gone. Grace exchanged a glance with Nathan. Another missing piece. Another coincidence that was probably not a coincidence at all. Nathan walked slowly across the room. Above them, dozens of floors of offices continued operating as if nothing had changed. Meetings were happening. Reports were being filed. Phones were ringing. Yet beneath the building, the foundation of an entirely different story was taking shape. Amara suddenly stood. There is something I never told anybody. Every head turned toward her. Nathan smiled slightly. You seem to say that a lot. For the first time all afternoon, Amara smiled back. Then her expression became serious again. The night I recorded the video, I saw someone else. The room instantly grew quiet. Someone else? Grace asked. Amara nodded. After the person came out of the records office. Nathan felt his pulse quicken. Who? The little girl frowned, trying to remember. I did not see their face. They were standing near the elevators. Walter leaned forward. What were they doing? Amara looked toward the hallway outside the maintenance room. The memory was becoming clearer. They were watching. Nobody spoke. Watching who? Nathan asked. Amara swallowed. Mr. Walter. A chill moved through the room. Because suddenly the situation looked different. This was not merely someone hiding financial records. Someone had been monitoring Walter long before the investigation began. Someone had expected him to become a problem. And somewhere inside Whitmore Tower, that person was likely realizing that a 9-year-old girl had just become an even bigger one. The maintenance room felt unusually still after Amara's revelation. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead while everyone processed what she had just said. Nathan Whitmore stood near the computer station with his hands resting on the edge of the desk. "You are certain someone was watching Walter?" he asked gently. Amara nodded. "I remember because it felt strange." She looked down as she searched through the memory. The person was not walking anywhere. They were standing still. Grace Holloway exchanged a glance with Nathan, watching him before the investigation even started. Nathan slowly nodded. The implication was impossible to ignore. Walter had not accidentally become a suspect. Someone may have been preparing for that outcome long before the missing records were discovered. Walter looked troubled. "I never noticed anybody following me." "That does not mean it did not happen," Grace replied. Nathan checked the time. It was approaching late afternoon. The board meeting scheduled for that evening was only a few hours away. Originally, it had been planned as a routine financial review. Now it was becoming something very different. Nathan picked up the black document case. "We are finished hiding." Walter looked surprised. "What do you mean?" Nathan's eyes settled on the folders inside the case. "Whoever started this expects us to keep searching quietly." He closed the case firmly. "Instead, we are bringing everything into the open." Grace smiled slightly. She knew exactly what that meant. Nathan turned toward her. "Reserve the executive boardroom." "Already done." "Invite every board member." "Consider it done." Walter shifted uneasily. "Sir, are you sure?" Nathan looked at him. "Earlier today, I accused an innocent man because I trusted incomplete information." His voice remained calm but firm. "I am not making that mistake twice." Amara watched him carefully. For the first time since entering the building that morning, she saw something different in the billionaire. Not authority, not confidence, humility. The group returned upstairs. As the elevator climbed through the building, the atmosphere changed once again. Maintenance corridors disappeared. Executive floors returned. Glass walls reflected the golden light of late afternoon. Yet something felt different now. Nathan no longer viewed the building as a symbol of success. He viewed it as a place where people depended on him to notice the truth. When the elevator doors opened, Grace's phone immediately began vibrating. She checked the screen and frowned. More messages. Nathan already knew what she would say. "Rumors?" Grace nodded. "The story is spreading faster." Several executives were now claiming Walter had manipulated evidence. Others questioned whether a child should be involved at all. The language was remarkably consistent. Too consistent. Nathan looked out across the lobby. Employees lowered their voices whenever he passed. Conversations stopped. Eyes followed the black document case in his hand. Someone inside the company was clearly nervous. Very nervous. Then another detail caught Grace's attention. She stopped walking. "Nathan." He turned. "What is it?" Grace held up her phone. "Look at this." A company-wide calendar notification had just been sent. The board meeting had somehow been marked as canceled. Nathan stared at the screen. "I did not cancel it." "Neither did I." Walter frowned. "Can somebody else do that?" Grace nodded slowly. "Only a handful of executives have access." The group exchanged silent looks. The timing was too perfect. Too convenient. Nathan immediately pulled out his phone and reopened the meeting. Then he added an additional note visible to every board member. "Attendance required. Financial review updated. Mandatory." Grace smiled faintly. "That should get their attention." Nathan slipped the phone back into his pocket. "Good." Across the lobby, a familiar figure emerged from a corridor. Diane Mercer. She walked toward them with her usual polished confidence, but Nathan noticed something different. Her smile appeared tighter than before. "Nathan," she said pleasantly. "I heard the board meeting was canceled." Nathan met her gaze. "It is not." A brief silence followed. Diane recovered quickly. "Excellent. I look forward to it." Then her eyes drifted toward the black document case. Only for a second, but Amara saw it. Nathan saw it too. Diane continued smiling. "I assume your review is complete." "Not yet," Nathan replied. Diane nodded. "Well, I am sure everything will make sense eventually." She turned and walked away. Her heels clicked softly across the marble floor until she disappeared into the executive wing. Nobody spoke until she was gone. Then Amara looked up at Nathan. She looked worried. Nathan stared down the hallway where Diane had vanished. The setting sun painted long shadows across the glass walls of Whitmore Tower. Somewhere inside those shadows, the final pieces of the truth were waiting. And in just a few hours, every person who had tried to bury that truth would be sitting together in the same room. By 6 o'clock that evening, the executive boardroom on the top floor of Whitmore Tower was filled with quiet conversation and cautious smiles. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Chicago skyline as the last light of day faded into shades of gold and blue. Around the long conference table sat board members, senior executives, department heads, and legal advisors. Many had arrived expecting a routine financial discussion. The atmosphere changed the moment Nathan Whitmore entered carrying the black document case. Grace Holloway followed beside him. Walter Jenkins walked several steps behind. When employees noticed the old janitor entering the boardroom, whispers immediately spread across the room. Then something even more unexpected happened. Amara Brooks entered with her mother. Silence settled over the table. Nathan placed the document case in the center of the polished wood surface. Nobody touched it. Nobody looked away from it. Diane Mercer sat near the far end of the table. Her expression remained calm and professional, but she no longer appeared comfortable. Nathan remained standing. "Thank you all for attending." His voice carried easily through the room. "This morning, I authorized the termination of a loyal employee based on an investigation that I believed was accurate." Several people shifted in their seats. Walter lowered his eyes. Nathan continued, "I was wrong." The confession landed heavily. Nathan Whitmore rarely admitted mistakes publicly. The room became even quieter. Nathan opened the document case and removed the folders. One by one. "Today we discovered evidence that fundamentally changes what happened." Grace activated the large screen mounted on the wall. The maintenance hallway footage appeared. The room watched as the unidentified figure entered the records office. Then the image froze on the silver bracelet. Several board members leaned forward. Nathan allowed the silence to linger. Then he displayed the financial records recovered from the hidden compartment. Transaction logs appeared. Approval codes. Missing funds. Altered documentation. One page after another. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Board members exchanged uneasy glances. Nathan then displayed the unsent email drafted by Walter weeks earlier. The room read the message in complete silence. Walter had attempted to report concerns about irregularities in the Employee Assistance Fund before the investigation ever began. One board member slowly removed his glasses. Another shook her head in disbelief. Nathan finally turned toward Walter. This man was not stealing company records. Walter looked up. Nathan's voice remained steady. He was trying to protect employees who depended on company assistance. The room erupted into quiet murmurs. Years of assumptions were collapsing in real time. Diane remained silent. Nathan looked directly toward her side of the table. "There is one final detail." Grace changed the screen again. A photograph appeared from the annual company picnic held 6 months earlier. Hundreds of employees stood together smiling beneath white tents and summer sunshine. Nathan zoomed in. The image focused on Diane Mercer standing beside several executives. Around her wrist was a silver bracelet with a distinctive diamond-shaped charm. Nobody spoke. Grace displayed the next image. The enlarged still frame from the hallway footage. The same bracelet. The same charm. The same shape. The room became absolutely still. Diane's expression finally changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. Nathan saw it. So did everyone else. "Would you like to explain?" he asked quietly. Diane stared at the images for several seconds. The confidence that had carried her through the day slowly disappeared. "The fund was supposed to be temporary," she said at last. Several people frowned. Nathan remained silent. Diane looked around the room. Every year the company expanded it. Every year the costs increased. Her voice sounded tired now. "I moved money into investment accounts." Shock spread across the table. Diane quickly continued. "I intended to return it. The returns would have covered everything." Nathan did not interrupt. Diane lowered her eyes. Then the losses started. Nobody moved. Nobody looked away. The truth was finally standing in the open. Not because of a forensic audit. Not because of lawyers. Not because of executives. Because an old janitor chose integrity over silence, and a little girl refused to ignore what she saw. Nathan slowly closed the final folder. "You framed an innocent man to protect yourself." Diane said nothing. Her silence answered for her. Several minutes later, legal counsel escorted her from the room. No one celebrated. No one applauded. The moment felt too serious for that. After the doors closed, Nathan remained standing. He walked around the table and stopped in front of Walter Jenkins. The old janitor immediately rose from his chair. Nathan extended his hand. Walter looked surprised. Then he accepted it. "I owe you an apology." Walter's eyes filled with emotion. Nathan continued, "You served this company with honesty for nearly 30 years. I should have trusted your character before I trusted assumptions." The room watched in silence. Nathan then turned toward Amara. The little girl suddenly looked nervous under the attention. Nathan smiled. "And I owe another apology." Amara blinked. "To me?" Nathan nodded. "You tried to tell the truth from the beginning. I should have listened sooner." A small smile appeared on Amara's face. The board members began applauding softly. Not for Nathan. Not for themselves. For Walter. For Amara. For the truth that almost disappeared. Outside the windows, the city lights shimmered against the darkening sky. Inside Whitmore Tower, something far more important had been restored. Trust.